Hi, I'm Maria Langer. Join me for a tour of my jewelry studio. I want to start this tour of my studio with my workbench, which is homemade. It's basically cobbled together from a lot of some IKEA furniture and a desktop on it, but it works really well for me. I keep all of my tools within reach, the ones I use most often, a bunch of hammers and hand tools, cutting tools, wheels for my flex shaft. You can see my flex shaft sitting there. Pens and markers and scissors and all kinds of stuff, as well as my scrap metals. As I make jewelry and I have to cut off pieces of silver or copper, I save them all because you can recycle them. Sometimes I also use them melted down to make balls and other little things. Then I've got drawers underneath. And that's also more tools and more equipment. Everything is labeled. I may as well show you this right now. This is where I keep some more stuff, some books, some empty containers, a little bit of a disaster over here, but in the drawers, everything is filed away nice and neat. I've got lots of natural light coming in through the window, but I also have a desk lamp that gives me extra light if I need it. And then, of course, there's overhead lights. This area over here is for more metalworking. On the right, you see my metal shear, and that can cut through metal, let's see, copper probably up to 18 gauge, sterling silver maybe up to 20 gauge. And it's a great tool for taking large pieces of sheet metal and cutting it down to smaller, more manageable pieces. And then in addition to that, I've got a Durston rolling mill, and that works great. And it does not it's not set up to make wire or to thin out wire. I don't have that. I just have flat rollers on it. But I use various texture plates with this to put textures onto sterling silver and copper. Underneath, I have more tools, more equipment, my texture plates, some raw materials, things like that. The radiator is a winter thing. We're just getting past winter now, and that's how I heat the room. I've got two of those. Got my Amelia Earhart picture there with a reflection on her. My dogs are in right now. And then I've got my soldering station. So the soldering station has, of course, an area to do the actual soldering, and I've got a number of different kinds of blocks. And I've also got an annealing pan there. Right now, I've got just two kinds of torches. They're both butane. And I tell you, they've been working really well for me. So if jewelry making, you've been holding back because you think you need some kind of a fancy torch, you don't. You can do pretty well with especially the larger of these two. May as well show it to you close up. And that's called a big shot. I highly recommend this. This will get really hot. So it's good for annealing, and then the other ones are pretty decent for soldering. It's just a matter of getting used to them. Also up here, I have a quenching bowl, empty right now. I've got a crock pot that I put pickle in. I've got a liver of sulfur jar, which right now is just sitting on a warmer, nothing really going on in there. And then I've got some baking soda that will neutralize any kind of acid stuff that I happen to be working on. A whole bunch of little tools there. And then behind, I've got my third hands. I have 3 of them. And I have a ring soldering thing. I've got my flux and my solder. I've got a hot plate up here that I actually have 2 of them, but I only use the black one. And I use that for doing kumbo, which I don't do very often because it requires me to use gold and people don't want to pay for it. So there you go. And up top, I've got my fuel, my butane fuel, and also a hot pot to heat things up. Also sitting there upside down, because that's the way it fits on the shelf, is a tripod for soldering. I use that when I do enameling, which I also don't do very often. Down below that is a cabinet. It's got more supplies in it. You know, trying to keep things organized. That's the big thing. Going back to the right here, you see a homemade table that I made out of 2x4s and some nice thick plywood, and a couple of things that are on top. I've got a wonderful piece of steel. It is very heavy. It probably weighs about 60 pounds, although I know it doesn't look like it. And I've got little pieces of wood holding it in place there. It's not going anywhere. I've also got a vise that's got a hammering surface. I I don't usually use that hammering surface though. And I've put copper plates on the vise to protect metal because otherwise it would have grooves in it that could damage the metal. And then I've got a small tool vise that I can use when I'm working on smaller items and need to really get in there. Underneath, in addition to a box of tissues for my allergies, I've got a whole bunch of stamps, and then I've also got a device I can use with the vise to change the shape of metal. Okay, going back to this side of the room now. This is just a big empty workspace that I usually will fill up with something that I'm working on, something big that I'm working on, and then try to keep it cleared off when I'm not working on that anymore. Over here, I've got a tabletop kiln. Trying to use that for enameling, but I haven't started doing that yet. I usually do torch enameling. And then I've got a grinder polisher. I don't use that very much at all either. I rather use my flex shaft with smaller devices. And then I've got, covered in plastic, is my little drill press. And then I have an anvil here that I don't currently use, but it's very heavy. And right now it's just stored right there out of the way. I prefer using that steel block. Now on this side of the room is my jewelry classroom. And it actually doubles as my bookbinding studio. I do some bookbinding as a hobby. I might teach that eventually. But right now I teach jewelry making, silversmithing, metalworking, some wire work, but not very often. And over here I've got a table that can accommodate up to 3 students if I take those giant pads off of it. However, I really prefer just to have 2 people at that. If my demand for classes gets larger and I get up to 4 students, I will buy a second one of those and then do a whole bunch of furniture moving. This bench over here, it's drawers. It has some inventory of cabochons in it. And then on top, I've got 2 paper cutting devices, a regular paper cutter on the right with a box on top, and then a paper guillotine. And again, these are used for bookbinding. The whiteboard is a great thing that I had gotten to use in the classroom to make notes on. When I was building my house, I used to use it a lot just to write down the things I needed to do. And it's set up right now for a bracelet class that I did. Over here, I've got a futon, and that's probably going to come out of here eventually, and a chair as well. This weird looking box in the corner is my photo studio where I will set up jewelry with lights on the outside shining in to photograph my work to put it online. And then I've just got a whole bunch of other stuff hanging around. Through the doors is my garage. This room is insulated and I can climate control it with a radiator and also air conditioner. I have a portable air conditioner I use. And this is basically it. This is my workspace. I do open studio hours on many, but not all, Wednesdays. You need to go to my website, www.mljewelrydesigns.com, and look for the event calendar, and it'll tell you when I'm open for open studio. Visitors come by and watch me work, or I could do one-on-one training, or I allow people who know what they're doing to use my equipment while I'm present. That's another thing. And there's also my classes are listed there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it didn't go too long. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. You can like if you want. You can subscribe if you want. I'm not putting a lot of content on this channel, but if I get encouraged, maybe I will. Thanks very much for watching this far. Take care. Bye.